live now. We're live, Sheriff.
Hello, I'm Sheriff John Rutherford, and thank you for joining us. This is our call-in show number that you can call and actually ask questions of me, 630-1832. Of course, that's area code 904. 630-1832 if you'd like to call in and ask some questions. I have topics that I'll be discussing today, but you can call in and ask about anything. Just to give you an idea, I'm going to be talking about medical, quote, marijuana, red light cameras, homelessness, also a little bit about our new traffic application that is currently up and running. Also, this time of year we have Halloween right around the corner. We're talking about some Halloween safety tips, as well as the fact that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and talk a little bit about domestic violence. And of course, we are always in a recruitment mode here at JSO to fill our vacancies as they occur, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And of course, also to announce our next public auction of items that have been seized, usually through drug deals and that sort of thing. And as you've seen before, we get some interesting property to then auction off, and so we'll be talking about that coming up as well. But first, let me go right into the issue of medical marijuana, which is going to be Amendment 2 on the ballot in November, specifically November 4th. Folks, you've got to be aware that there are a number of loopholes that are built into, and I say built into because I believe John Mills, when he drafted this, put these loopholes in the language on purpose. One of those loopholes is when you talk about debilitating medical conditions. I've stated many times that all of the sheriffs of Florida agree that there is efficacy in medical marijuana, particularly in the cannabinoids and the THC, that are beneficial. We've seen that. We know that Charlotte's Web is beneficial, particularly for some children who are suffering intractable epilepsy, and it's known to help them with their epilepsy and all of those seizures. And so we know it works in some cases. And in those cases where it truly is a debilitating medical disease, we agree with that it should be available for debilitating medical conditions. However, that is not what the amendment is about. And so throughout the amendment document, if you go and read it, and I hope you will, I think we have it posted on our website, go look at the actual amendment language itself, and what you see is they probably use the term debilitating medical condition, I don't know, 50 or more times throughout the document. However, there is a definition for debilitating medical condition. And if you look at B1A, the definition of debilitating medical condition, and they start off with all the things that we would all agree with. The epilepsy, as I mentioned earlier, glaucoma, cancer, people who are in end of life as a result of suffering cancer, other horrific diseases, ALS, things that are truly debilitating, and in some cases actually end of life for these individuals. And if we can relieve their pain and suffering by allowing them to utilize medical marijuana, we're all in favor of it, we being the Florida sheriffs. And in fact, even if they have to smoke it, if they're end of life, look, I know there's a lot of people who are against it because it has 400 carcinogens in it and all of that. But look, if you're talking about somebody that's end of life, all we're concerned about is eliminating their pain and suffering. And so if medical marijuana can address that, even if they have to smoke it, I would be in favor of that. And that's why the Florida sheriffs and the legislature got behind Charlotte's Web, which is an extract, an oil extract out of marijuana that's then dropped under the patient's tongue, and it's been shown to be very effective. And so I don't want to argue the science of it. I don't know the science of it, actually. I just know that I've seen cases where it works. So we want to make that available. However, the amendment does not stop there when it talks about debilitating medical conditions. Yes, it lists all these horrific diseases, but then it says, or any other medical condition for which a physician believes the use of medical marijuana outweighs the risk, not far outweighs, but outweighs the risk to the patient. And so that's the loophole. That throws it open for everyone and anyone for any disease that some doctor wants to give it to them. And so what we will have, which is the exact same situation we have with the pill mills, where doctors could, prescribe oxycodone and hydrocodone to anybody for anything, and that's a concern. Everywhere we had a pill mill, we're now going to have a pot shop. And we do not need that in the state of Florida. Something else that the public doesn't know about it, but you need to read, and that is that caregivers can actually be certified by the state to help deliver medical marijuana to up to 5 patients. There's nothing in that statute that or in this amendment, constitutional amendment, that will actually require that the recipient of the medical marijuana be an adult. And what that means is your children will actually have access to medical marijuana without your knowledge. A lot of people don't understand that. You're not going to get a prescription from the doctor to go down to CVS or Walgreens pharmacy to have that prescription filled. You get an order, and you go to a certified distributor. These are all loopholes that really open the door for a lot of problems across the state of Florida. That's one reason we're adamantly opposed to this amendment. Now, I should also mention, it's interesting to me that the folks who support medical marijuana would actually try to push through a constitutional amendment. Constitutional amendments are a bad way to make law concerning issues like this. I'm sure many of you remember the pregnant pig that got into the state of Florida's Constitution. It's since been removed, but should have never been there to begin with. This is another situation where we're going to put something in our Constitution that a lot of people think, well, later on the legislature can set the parameters and the rules and the regulations for this. No, remember this though, they cannot be more restrictive than the Constitution. So the language in the amendment will prevail. You can't change that. You cannot make it more restrictive. And so that's an important element. And that's why I think we need to reject Amendment 2, vote no on Amendment 2 in November, and let's go back to the legislature to talk about additional needs for medical marijuana in our community, and do it through the legislative process where all these things get vetted. And I'm going to close on the medical marijuana with this one example. If you go into a restaurant, now I don't know the answer to this question, I'm just going to propose a hypothetical. If you go into a restaurant and you see the sign on the door that says no animals, well, you can't stop someone from taking their service dog in. So I'm thinking fast forward to medical marijuana having passed, and the individual that sits down at the table beside you, and he fires up a joint, and they try to stop him, and he says, whoa, you can't stop me, I'm taking my medicine. Where is the restaurant owner going to stand? None of those questions have been answered yet. And so those are some of the gray areas that I'm very concerned about this bill. There are just too many loopholes. So as we leave that, I'll ask Melissa, we have any callers?
We do. Chris is going to be sending the call in. It's Jack V, and I think he wants to keep the conversation going because he wants to talk to you about Amendment 2 as well.
Okay, Jack.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Appreciate how you and JSO are doing for our city, sir. I've got 2 questions on this constitutional amendment. I'm looking at my absentee ballot and you're ready to fill it in. How far can a debilitating disease be stretched? Will that cover arthritis or Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, something like that?
Debilitating medical conditions is all of those that you see listed there under the ballot summary. Well, not the ballot summary. It's not in the ballot summary.
No,
you have to go to the definition list.
Oh boy.
And the definition list, as I mentioned, lists all of these truly debilitating medical diseases, but then the loophole comes in and says, or any other medical condition for which a physician believes that medical marijuana outweighs the risk to the patient. That means, as you mentioned, arthritis. Now, arthritis possibly could be. I wouldn't argue that could not be debilitating. In fact, I know that it can be. But, well, tennis elbow, sore back, anxiety over having to take tests at school. It could be anything. It's and that's the problem, Jack. It's basically anything the doctor wants to order it for. Now, again, he can't write a prescription for it. He qualifies this patient and gives them an order that they can then go to a state distributor to get that order filled. And there are just so many loopholes.
My second question on that, if I were out eating at a restaurant or something with our son and grandchildren, and somebody comes in and lights up one of these, a couple of guys come in and light up, and they haul out their whip out their medical drug list, is that permitted?
Right. In fact, I know you were on hold, but I just mentioned that I don't know. I suspect that it would be difficult for someone to be able to stop somebody from taking their medication.
Well, yeah, that can happen at the library or anyplace else.
Exactly. So and those are the kind of questions that need to be vetted through the legislative process, which is why any law dealing with this subject should be vetted through the legislative process, not a constitutional amendment where people are clearly being misled about what it deals with to begin with. Yeah. And that's why I think they chose this process, because they know that they can fool the public by this language. And listen, I know I raised this issue with John Morgan when he was here at UNF, and I said, look, this is deceptive. And he said, no, it's not. In fact, the state the state Supreme Court already ruled against Ms. Bondi, the Attorney General, who tried to raise the same issue, that it was confusing and misleading. And what the state Supreme Court said, no, it's very clear. It means what it says, and that's what concerns me. It actually means what it says, and what it says is any other medical condition for which a physician believes that the use of medical marijuana outweighs the risk to the patient. That's anything that doctor wants to give it for. Nobody can question that judgment. The legislature can't make it more restrictive. DOH, the Department of Health, can't make it more restrictive. That's going to be up to the doctor and the patient, and we know how well that went with the pill mills. And so, I'm sorry, Jack.
None of those things are even mentioned on the ballot, because all it's on there is just that one paragraph.
Exactly. All the ballot summary says is debilitating medical condition.
Right.
You actually have to go look at the body of the amendment, which on your ballot you don't have access to.
No, sir, I do not.
Which is why I think this is clearly deceptive.
The safest thing to me
you were voting for medical marijuana for a debilitating medical disease. Unknowingly, you're also going to be voting to allow it for anything a doctor wants to give it out for. Anything.
Safest thing I can do is vote no, and hope everybody else does too. Then.
Absolutely, Jack, and thank you for calling in, and thank you for voting no on 2 and helping to keep.
There's 2 no votes going in from our household, that's for sure.
Good. Well, thank you very much for that, and thanks for helping us keep pot out of the backpack of every middle and high schooler in Jacksonville. Thank you.
That's where it's headed. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Hey, just a reminder here too, Melissa. I want to let everybody know that they can tweet us also at JSOPIO, or type your question and then type your question under the post on the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office Facebook page. We can get it there also. So you can tweet us at JSOPIO. You can Facebook us the question on our Facebook page, or you can call in at 630-1832. Thank you, Melissa.
We have a person who posted on Facebook. His name is Mal Redriet, and he has a question about red light cameras. He's seen the recent news coverage about the red light cameras, and he's confused, saying, so an increase in crashes at cameras monitored intersections is okay with JSO. We thought this was supposed to be about safety.
It absolutely is about safety, Mel, and I have to tell you, this is probably one of the worst reported things I've seen. Because actually, if all I knew is what I saw on television, I'd be extremely confused as well. So let me give you some facts. The facts is, yes, crashes are up at some locations. And I think, to quote WOKV, crashes are up at many locations. Right, but what they don't tell you is crashes are down at more locations. Down at more locations than they're up. So, in fact, total crashes are up at 7 intersections. They are down at 10. 10 intersections have seen reductions in crashes, and some intersections have seen an increase in crashes. Most of the increases that we have seen are a result of rear-end crashes, where vehicle number 1 stops for the red light, and number 2 crashes into the rear of them because they thought he was going to run it like they'd been doing, in the past. Or they're texting, and they're not. There's a lot of different reasons people rear end. Like one of our officers was sitting at a red light just yesterday, just sitting at the red light, and got rear-ended. So every rear end is not a result of someone slamming on their brakes to stop for a red light. Our officer didn't do that. He was simply sitting there, motionless, and had been for some time before he was hit in the rear by a vehicle who clearly wasn't paying attention. I kind of suspect was probably texting. I don't know that, but that's we see a lot of that. That's why I say that. So I can understand how someone would be confused about these numbers. I should also say there are side impacts, which are the more deadly of the two, rear end versus side impact. They're actually down 12%. So there's a lot more to the statistics than what you were told. Many crashes are up at many of the intersections. Yeah, well, they're down at more. So it is a public safety issue. I've said all along that's what I'm most concerned about, and I think it's a very good and valuable program for the city of Jacksonville. Anything else on that one?
Not on that one, but I do have another tweet that just came in from a Gene Steverson, and he tweets us saying, with the shortage of police officers on the street, what can we as citizens do to step up and help the police?
Oh, well, thank you, Gene. I tell you, one thing that we're always trying to do at JSO, because we are 147 police officers short from where we were just as recently as 2011, before we started all these cuts. Now we've got 147 police. We've got all 92 community service officers. You know, those young men and women who used to be out there in the bright green uniforms working crashes and things for us. Look, one of the things that we're always looking for is how can we do a better job with fewer resources? And in fact, this kind of feeds right into the red light conversation. The video red light enforcement. I don't have enough officers to put out at every intersection working traffic to write red light violators. And I think that's why red light violators were taking over our streets. It was nothing. If you remember, a lot of these intersections where we now have these videos, it was nothing to see 3, 4, 5 cars deep run that red light because they knew they weren't going to be caught. Because my officers are in the neighborhoods trying to fight the violent crime instead of, trying to sit at a red light and enforce traffic laws. So that's one thing that we do. We try to use technology to our advantage, and that's what we're doing through the video red light enforcement. Second thing is, as we have shrunk our resources, our police officers and community service officers, you, the public, become even more important. What we need are SHADCO members, the Sheriff's Advisory Council members who sit down and work community to be our eyes and ears. I do not want you to be our hands and feet, okay? We don't want a Sanford, Florida situation. I want you to be our eyes and ears. Call in, tell us what you see, but do not physically get involved. That's not what we need you to do. We want you to be our eyes and ears, not our hands and feet. And so, Gene, that's a couple of the best ways that you can get involved with us. You can also volunteer with PAL, our Police Athletic League, where we serve over 2,000 kids every year, and we have educational programming for them. It's not just sports anymore. It's not just an athletic league anymore for the kids, but we actually give them after-school programming. And we're helping our kids. And I think our number, I want to say, and don't hold me to this number, but it's roughly 97% of our PAL kids are promoting to the next grade on time. That is a huge accomplishment. And you know, I'm very thankful for all of our educational teachers at our after-school program, because they're doing a great job with our PAL kids and making sure that they graduate on time. You can volunteer for PAL. There's a lot of other ways that you get involved. Big Brothers, Big Sisters. It's amazing how many children in Duval County don't have a mother or a father, and they're living with a single parent, and they need that opposite sex contact and caring and mentoring. And so get involved in those programs as well. Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and that's the best way you can help us, I think. Anything else, Melissa?
That's all right now.
All right. Well, listen. Let's move now to the homeless situation. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. You know, yesterday we had a red mass downtown at the Basilica of Immaculate Conception. For those of you that may not know, Immaculate Conception, what used to be Immaculate Conception Church downtown on Ocean Street, was recently upgraded in status to a basilica, and it's now the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception. And I can tell you they are struggling there with the homeless population, as well as St. John's Episcopal Church right next door. The challenges are this homeless population, the same population that we see down in Hemming Plaza, and the city's throwing $1 million into that issue, trying to run the homeless out of the park there in Hemming. And so I want to talk a little bit about the homeless population, and because I think a lot of people have some misnomers about this population. And first of all, a lot of people talk about homelessness like it's one big monolithic group, and it absolutely is not. Homelessness is really what I describe as three different groups. One is the homeless population that most of us see in the ads and that sort of thing on helping the homeless, and those are families. Many of them even have children, and it's sad to see children being homeless in our community. Now, the Sulzbacher, the City Rescue Mission, all of the nonprofits that serve our homeless population do a great job in serving this population. These are folks who have had some economic calamity befall them, and now they need a hand up. But the key here is they want a hand up. They don't want a hand out. They are looking for jobs. They're trying to find jobs. They're trying to retool and reskill themselves for the job market. And those are the folks that are really getting the help, and they're going to the shelters. Now, the second group that I will tell you is out there is the mentally ill and the severely addicted. And most of them are not going to shelters. They will not go to a shelter. They don't want the assistance. They try to stay away. Look, that population needs treatment. They don't need incarceration. And quite frankly, they're not going to take the services of these nonprofits that are out there designed to help homelessness. Very few of them are actually going to go in to get services. They're mentally ill or they're severely addicted. And if you're addicted, whether it's alcohol or cocaine, whatever it may be, you're not welcome in a shelter, and you shouldn't be. Sulzbacher can't have drunks and drug addicts coming in and staying there. Not when they have, women with children and that sort of thing that they're housing already. So I'm not saying that they should be doing this, but but we need services for the mentally ill and the severely addicted. We've done a lot at JSO to try and work with the mental health community in diverting the mentally ill out of the criminal justice system. I hate the fact that as Sheriff of Duval County, I run the largest residential mental health care facility in the county, and that's the Duval County Jail. That is just not acceptable. So we need to look for other services in the community to treat this population. Part of that is going to take, the fix for part of this is going to be going to Tallahassee to get the money for the treatment. Florida is either 49th or 50th out of 50 in funding for mental health services, which means our state's at the bottom. And guess what? District 4, DCF District 4, Department of Children and Families District 4, which Jacksonville is part of, you guessed it, we're at the bottom of that for the state of Florida, District 4 is. So we're at the bottom of the bottom. And it's no wonder that we have huge mental health and addiction problems in our community within the homeless population. Now, the third group that we need to address, and these are the people that are, some call them chronically homeless. I call them hobos. These are folks that they have a different value system. They don't want a job. They don't want anybody telling them what to do. They want to live in the woods, and they're in the woods all over the city, all over the city, believe me. They're in every little patch of woods in the neighborhood that you can find. We have a whole unit designed to go out, find these camps, and tear them down with inmate labor, and we try to run the homeless population off. The problem is, you put them in jail, they come right back. The people at Hemming Plaza who are urinating in the fountain, for example, I make that arrest, we put them in jail, 3 days later or so, 10 days maybe, at the worst probably, they get out, they're released right here on Forsyth Street where the jail's located. They're 4 blocks from the problem. So the problem is, folks that look at this issue want to draft legislation to outlaw what they're doing. Well, we already have laws for what this homeless population is doing. There's already laws against urinating in the fountain. There's laws against defecating on the sidewalk. There's laws against that already. The problem is, when I put them in jail, they get right back out. Law does not change their behavior because they don't care about going to jail. And that's part of what the community needs to realize. This population in fact, they kind of like going to jail. They call it 3 hots and a cot. We give them 3 hot meals and they get a nice place to rest. So jail is not a deterrent. So forget that element. Putting people in jail time after time after time is not the way to address this chronic homeless problem. What I've suggested is, let's look at why they live in the woods where they live. The reason they're there is because they don't want anybody telling them what to do. They don't want to get a job. And what they would rather do is steal from those of us around them and panhandle. And so what you see is they locate in neighborhoods because what they can do there is they can go steal stuff off of porches and back porches and out of garages and that sort of thing. I took Amanda Warford with me from, I think, Channel 47. Took her out to a homeless camp that we were closing out off of Mayport Road. A half a block, I should mention, from Mayport Elementary School. And I showed her the conditions there. And I asked her to look around and tell me what she saw. And she mentioned the big tent and a couple sleeping bags and a grill and all these things that were there. And I told her, I said, Amanda, realize this guy's homeless, has no job. You think he bought all this stuff? No, this is all the stuff that comes out of people's garages and off of their carports and off their back porches. That's where this property comes from. The reason they live in that little patch of woods is because they're in what I call a TRE, a target-rich environment. And right down the street from this camp, as is with most of these, there's a little convenience store. So they can go down there and bum money from people as they're going in, and quite frankly, they get very aggressive sometimes. That's the issue we're having down at Basilica of the Immaculate Conception. The bums in that area, the folks who are hobos, chronically homeless, those are the folks who are going down there, and they're starting to get aggressive with the congregant. that's trying to attend church, and that is not acceptable. Whether there or at St. John's or any of the other churches downtown. I know Baptist has issues, First Baptist has issues as well. So I think the only way we're going to impact this population is to put there has to be some deterrent in that arrest. If we're going to change their behavior, there has to be some deterrent in that arrest. And here's how I think we can put deterrence in the arrest of these misdemeanor individuals. If we go out off of 301, we own all that pine forest over there off of Cecil Field. Let's come in off of 301, cut a trail in there, open it up. Let's build a shelter right there in the middle of that pine forest, and let's give them all the services they need. I don't want to, this population does not need to be abused, but we shouldn't be allowing them to abuse us either. Build that facility. I will build a misdemeanor releasing facility right next to it. So anybody that gets arrested in Duval County for a misdemeanor will be released out there off of 301 in the middle of that pine forest, and their folks can come and pick them up. The hobos, if they want to walk back to Hemming Plaza, they got a 12-mile walk. They're free to do that, but if they urinate in the fountain again, they're looking at another 12-mile walk. Eventually, their behavior will change, or they'll get tired of walking back and forth. So I think that's the simplest way to build a deterrent into the arrest process for this homeless population. And we have to, folks, we have to address this. It is impacting every business downtown, not just our churches, but every business. So I can tell you that it's called the Home Team, the Homeless Outreach Managed Enforcement Group that I have go out. Sergeant Smith does an amazing job going out and dismantling and throwing away all of the trash that these homeless folks in these camps pull into the woods. And we use inmate labor to do that, and it's been incredibly successful. So that's enough on homelessness. And what do we have online, Melissa?
I want to remind everybody that if they have a question, they can call us at 630-1832. And we're going to take a Facebook message from Nathan Brown. His question is, what is the status of rehiring the laid-off JSO and CSO officers?
Thank you very much for that, Nathan. We've actually hired back already all of the police officers that would come back. In fact, over the course of the last 3 years, after we laid off those 48, we contacted all of them to come back to JSO to fill vacancies that had been created since they had been laid off. And sadly to report, I think, and don't hold me to this number, but something like 23 of those 48 did come back. The remainder said, no, Sheriff, we're too worried about the pension situation, the salary situation in Jacksonville, and we're not coming back. But they went to be police officers somewhere else, and they're not coming back. So we have hired others, obviously, but the CSO program, the Community Service Officer program, CSO, we have no funding to start that program back. Most of those young folks who were able to got law enforcement jobs in other locations. We did hire some of them in other places throughout the sheriff's office. I think we had a few that became community or correctional officers. A few went to other civilian positions within JSO, but most of them had to find jobs outside of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, which is really a shame, because the Community Service Officer program was a tremendous opportunity for us to recruit. In fact, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, to diverge here just a little bit, we just went through our on-site for CALIA accreditation. We are one of very few agencies across the country that are what they call Triple Crown accredited, which means we have accreditation from CALIA, the Commission on Law Enforcement accreditation. We have American Corrections Association accreditation, and we have accreditation from the National Commission on Corrections Healthcare. We have all three of those nationally recognized accreditations, and we're very proud of that. one of the things, Nathan, that they looked at when they were here was our CSO program, the way it had been operating, because it was something that the assessors had never seen before, and one of their biggest recommendations was to get that program back, because it really is. It's a cost-effective way to bring on these force multipliers, and I told them that, look, we were trying. We had tried this year to bring them back, but the budget simply wouldn't let us. We had 40 police officers and 40 community service officers in the budget. The mayor didn't address the revenue needs of this city, and so we wound up, the city council had to cut all of the one-time and borrowing that the mayor had put in the budget that they had been handed from the mayor. And so they had to cut those 40 police officers and 40 CSOs. So the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is still 147 police officers short, all 92 community service officers short. I wish there was some way I could bring those back, but right now we just can't do it. I should mention too that a great thing about that program was our ability to recruit minorities right out of high school, get them into this program, help them with their continuing education through college, and that qualified them to be a police officer after they left the CSO program. All of that went away with the budget cuts over the last 3 years, and that's, I hope we can bring that program back at some time. I'm not going to give up on that program. I'm sure whoever my predecessor or successor will be will also want to restore that program. Anything else?
We do. Susan Singer has posted to Facebook, can you please tell parents how important it is to know where your teen or young adult child is and who they are with? Tell them how to guide their children on making right decisions, and who to hang around with is so important. There is so much violence and murders pertaining to crowded parties and clubs that it's better to be a parent than a friend and know where your child is going to be.
Susan, that's a great statement. Your children need parents, not friends. They have friends that they go to school with. They need parents that will set those guidelines for them. And that is incredibly important. And in fact, Reverend John Guns out in St. Paul's Missionary Baptist Church has said that, as I have, that our crime is about values. And it's not so much about economics as it is values. And so we need to teach those values, and part of that is, what's impacting on your children's values is who they hang around with. That is an important element. You need to know who it is, you need to know where they're at, you need to know what they're doing. I'm going to tell you one way you can do that, to know without just having to ask. Of course, if you keep a good open dialogue with your children, you can find some of these things out, but there's always some things that they probably won't tell you. Past experience as a father. But I can tell you, I searched their rooms regularly, and I read everything that I could find laying around in their room. I looked through little books and what I could find, and thank God I didn't find anything bad. So I was a very happy and proud parent. But had they been into something, I could have discovered it. I would have hoped through some of that process too. But know what your kids are doing, who they're with, what's going on. That is so very important. I can also tell you, parents, if you are struggling with a child that is just completely unruly, ungovernable, and you don't know what to do with them, I encourage you to call the Help Center. Now, the Help Center helps parents be parents, particularly parents of very stubborn and unruly children. Now, here's the key, I think, that the Help Parent Project will tell you, and that is it's usually not the kid, it's the parent. Now, I don't say that to be derogatory, but they can show you how to better manage your child so that you get out of them really what you want, because you can't externally motivate someone. they are motivated internally. And Glenn Ellison and his wife Sheila, who run the Parent Project here in Jacksonville, do a fantastic job. I can tell you I've had letter after letter after letter, and I've had personal, tearful testimony from people about how the I Help Parents Project actually saved their family. And that is a tremendous, tremendous program. And I think you can find them at just slipped to me. Let me read it here. theparenthelpcenter.com. theparenthelpcenter.com. And I think that's an excellent source for those who may be trying to deal with a child who's just very stubborn, very unruly, and you can't figure out what to do with them. Glenn Ellison can help you develop that child. And so knowing what our children are doing, knowing who they're with, and then parenting them properly is very important. So you can also speak with Pastor Guns, John Guns of Save Our Sons initiative. He's focused on young males who don't have fathers, and that's a tremendous program as well, SOS. And I'm sorry I don't have their website, but that's another good group you can talk to. Melissa?
No, but in the media, we've been really pushing recruitment. Can you talk about how important it is about www.joinjso.com and how we're really trying to get word out about recruitment?
Yes. Listen, our civilian personnel are truly the backbone of our agency, and we certainly want excellent candidates for our police emergency communications officers, our clerical support, and many other types of jobs. We have a lot of nursing positions for our medical health care for inmates. I mentioned earlier that we're accredited by the National Commission on Corrections Health Care. We have some of the best nursing and medical staff in the city, right here at JSO, working with inmates over in our jail. And that's very important. And the reason for that is if we don't provide good medical services, it costs you, the taxpayers, when we are hit with a lawsuit. And so we work very hard here at JSO to be sure that people are treated properly for medical conditions and, quite frankly, mental health conditions while they're being incarcerated. So if you have a desire to know more about working for JSO, I would encourage you to go to our website at www.joinjso.com. You can also go to jacksheriff.org and look through all the different departments that are listed there. If you have an idea, maybe you have an interest in some other field other than medical corrections. Maybe it's being a police officer, a correctional officer, a civilian working in our crime analyst unit or IT department. It runs the gamut. So just go look at our both of those sites, jacksheriff.org or joinjso.com. And of course that's www on the front of that. What else we got?
Just Halloween's coming up, how people can be safe.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and let me read just a couple of these things for you. There are some ideas, and you can go on our website and pull all these safety tips up. But I think first and foremost is, number one, you need to go to our website at jacksheriff.org, click on Offender Watch, and see where all the sexual predators and offenders are that live in the area that you may be going to trick or treat. Those folks are not allowed, and we will be checking here at JSO, they are not allowed to decorate their homes to attract children to their house. In fact, I think they even have to turn all their lights off. So you want to know where those locations are so you don't go there. That's first and foremost. Secondly, choose Halloween costumes that have a lot of reflection. Many times, as kids get old enough to go out on their own, they're no longer walking with a mom or a dad, and they're excited. It's a busy night, and they forget, and they bolt across the street and get hit by a vehicle. So make sure that they are wearing bright, reflective clothes. And this may sound silly. Make sure their shoes fit. Believe it or not, people put different, like clown feet on them and that sort of thing. And the first thing they do is they trip and bust their lip or hit their noggin on the concrete. So make sure their shoes fit. It's pretty simple, but those are some of the things you can do. Also, because a mask can actually block their eyesight, consider non-toxic and hyperallergenic makeup. Put makeup on them instead of these masks, because the mask really does constrict their ability to see. Think twice before you start using simulated guns, knives, or swords for obvious reasons. We'd rather stay away from those things. But also teach your children their home phone number and how to call 911. That's also very important. And should lastly, should their costume somehow, a lot of people have these lanterns around and they stick candles in them and that sort of thing. If a child gets too close to that, their costume catches on fire and they're highly flammable, have them, if it's highly flammable, teach them to drop and roll. And if you go to our website at jacksheriff.org, you can get these Halloween Safety Day tips. There's a lot more of them. I'm not going to go through all these, but it really is a great way to be sure that your children are safe while they trick or treat. All right.
This month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and maybe talk a little bit about how important October is in reference to that.
Yes, we just had, actually we kicked off here at the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we had all of the executive directors from the different domestic violence shelters that were here with us to do that. I just recently went to the Ann Campbell breakfast, heard from two women who had suffered under horrific domestic violence conditions and how they escaped from their abuser. And listen, let me say this. This year, we've already had 8 domestic homicides. 8. I think that's up to 9 now after I saw one just the other day on television. So I think we're up to 9 now. We had 4 for all of last year. So I can also tell you that there are a lot of services. If you are suffering in a domestic violence situation, there are a lot of services available to you. Reach out to a police officer. If you are battered, that's a crime. Call and report that. Let us come out. We will assist you in having these services available to you, whether it's Hubbard House, our INVEST program. I can tell you our INVEST program, which is Intimate Violence, I forget what all it stands for, Intimate Violence, INVEST, INVEST. We have so many acronyms I can't keep up with all of them. But listen, that program is for intimate violence between domestic partners. We have not had a single individual enter the INVEST program that was later murdered by their spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend. So that's important. We can help you in that process. It's never more dangerous than when they go to leave. And that's when you really need the assistance of law enforcement, the state attorney's office, and our shelters like Hubbard House. And I can tell you, Ellen Seiler and all of the ladies and men that work over at Hubbard House do a fantastic job in providing sheltering and education to our domestic violence victims here in Duval County. We also have some great programs for batterers, the First Step program, where we actually teach batterers, usually men, that, look, domestic violence is not okay. Domestic violence is, in fact, a crime. And somebody just slid me the acronym here. It's INVEST stands for Intimate Violence Enhanced Services Team. So the INVEST program is there for you. And we're very proud of the fact that no one that has ever entered that program has later been murdered by their partner. And that is a very, very important program. That's why we have this Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We've got to get people to start talking about it, remove the stigma. There's no stigma attached to, there shouldn't be any stigma attached to domestic violence. Look, it's not the victim's fault that they're being battered, and it's not something that you're doing that is causing this. So we understand that now as well. And so there is no blaming of the victim for domestic violence. And I'd like to remind everyone that Hubbard House is out there for you. They're a shelter. They're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Their hotline is 354-3114. That's 354-3114. And I would suggest that if you're living in a battering situation, call Hubbard House and call the police, and let us help you get the services that you need to extricate yourself from that situation, because it is a horrific condition to live under. Okay, and finally, I will close again with this. This is our some information about our next public auction. It's scheduled for Thursday, November 6th at 10 a.m. That'll be at Everbank Field, Metro Park, parking lot F. And for more information, you can visit our website as well to get a preview, I think, of some of the items that will be at the auction, www.jacksheriff.org, and scroll down to where it says public notices. We put that information out so we can get folks to come in. Those dollars go into our criminal investigative fund. That allows us to buy software and computers and other things for officers who are conducting criminal investigations. And it really does help us get a better bang for our buck with your tax dollars as well. So remember, our next public auction is Thursday, November 6th at 10 a.m. And finally, I will close with this. November 4th, please vote no on Amendment 2. It is not about debilitating medical conditions. Understand that. Your children will be able to get it without your permission. Understand that. You are going to get it from a distribution center, not a pharmacist or a pharmacy. Understand that. And there are going to be people who will be able to deliver it to your children who are not medical personnel. Remember that. So thank you. Vote no on Amendment 2. And God bless and be safe until next month.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.